Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, a citizen of the universe and a passage keeper and mentor for our new Earth children. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality, and it is meant to embody deeper trust and ways into solid self-love and fearless integrity. Our new world energy of spirit babies needs us to consciously create within conception, trust pregnancy, and have freedom to birth and parent from innate wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 187. Everything is frequencies, expanding into your own divine blueprint to invite the energy of spirit babies. What does it mean that everything is frequencies? Are you ready to expand into your own blueprint? How are you supporting your energy with spirit babies in conception and pregnancy and into birthing and life? I have a special guest here, Anastacia. Anastacia. Am I saying it wrong?
No, both are good.
Okay. Anastacia Townsend, I'm sorry, has been sharing the abilities acquired over 30 years as a licensed massage therapist, biodynamic craniosacral therapist on land and in water, midwife, sacred birthing mentor, educator, and healing facilitator. I'm so excited. There's so much running through my mind on our conversations and our connections. Welcome. Say hello to everybody.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And so I feel like we go way back. I don't even know, probably in the birthing energy vibes and community. And maybe we've been secretly spying on each other for years.
I know that's true from my side about you.
Well, I was always really, maybe you don't know this, even like years ago on Facebook before the whole pandemic shift reality. I think you're more accepted now, to be honest. You really are. But before then, it was like, oh, she's a little bit controversial, or what is she saying? And about that quantum and about timelines and multidimension reality, people have softened because literally their consciousness has changed. And I remember some of your posts and I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, she's talking about things that people just don't get. I could tell. I was like, people are trying to left brain it, is what I say. They're trying to overthink it. And it's more than just that. And so that's my introduction to our meeting. And of course, you've been connected with mentorship and the Spirit Baby Academy, and it's been really awesome. But I want to hear, there's so many things I want to hear, like all this amazing work that you do. And it's all within the parenting and baby, realms, right?
Yeah, supporting families.
Yeah, tell me, let's go back in time and tell me more about midwifery, sacred mentoring. What does all that mean and how did you get into that?
Yeah, and sacred birthing mentoring. Sacred birthing, just to make that clear, is from the book Sacred Birthing, so with Birthing in Humanity with Sunny Carl, and it goes way back with her before sacred birthing was out in the world, birthed into the world, so to speak. But let's see. I guess in some ways it started with my own births, and I was really young when I started having babies, really, and for me it just felt quite natural. And then it moved into the energy realm, and I realized how much working with energy was like birth. It was really sort of the same to me, the way I would feel energy in my body and move energy and, birth babies. It just went together. So somewhere in there, I ended up, well, I was in massage school actually. And about the end of massage school, I ended up finding my teacher, and she's quite interesting. Still is. And yeah, the introduction to her was really interesting, and it was really a heart-opening experience for me. It's the first time I had felt this that kind of energy go through my body in a way, and just connecting. And it was really at a whole life expo, believe it or not. Back in the day, I don't know if that still exists, but at the time she was in that circuit, and I went to her talk and met quite a few people that I'm still connected to this day. And I didn't see myself doing that, but somehow through circumstance, I ended up in her classes. And really, for the last 30 years, I've studied energy medicine, really. But it's taken all kinds of different forms. Eventually, I went to midwifery school. When I did that, I was really careful because I wanted the imprint to be really specific. And I found quantum midwifery with Wapio, and it's the Matrona, and that's quite interesting work. And there's others out there that teach in that similar way, but at the time, that's who I found. And then, and somewhere before that, just before I'd found Sunny, and I had been teaching childbirth, and I had been doing a little bit of doula work. My kids were small, and I have 6 kids total that I birthed, so a lot of babies so a lot of experience with that. And then um, with Sunny, it was just an ongoing thing. She had um, got the book written and into the world, and then I went through all of, whatever she was teaching. We spent a lot of time in Hawaii, and I went through all her classes and whatever mentorship, and um, we're still connected as well. And I sat on the what she called the Sacred Birthing Guiding Circle, and yeah, well, you'll find me in her book in little spots where I've
That's cool. Would
yeah.
she come on this podcast?
Yeah, she would. Yeah, I actually thought about that today. She should totally be on your
You
podcast.
can hook us up.
Yeah, I will.
That would be amazing.
I will. It would be really fun. Yeah, she's super interesting, and it's it's so fun to just talk birth with her. So
Mm.
that'd be great. Yeah, so that's sort of my story around just being in this work. And I went into craniosacral because that work, because as I as babies were being born, I mean, that work is so perfect. Just as they're right there, they're right out of the womb, and they need those adjustments.
Mm.
And I was very attracted to the biodynamic craniosacral because it's really energetic. It's so gentle, and with babies, you don't even necessarily even have to actually put your hands on them. They're so sensitive. So um, I most of my approach in whatever I've been attracted to is always very gentle. And I would say it all stems from the original question that I had, which was um, my deepest interest was, how does soul meet body? How does spirit, work through the physical? Where's the place in the body that connects? And we're, spiritualizing matter in a sense. So yeah, that's
So
always been.
what is the answer to that?
I'm still working on it, but I found so much more in terms of just literally the physics of how we come into being. That's probably why when you've heard me go off on these
Yeah.
tangents, usually you'll speak, and then something will trigger those thoughts for me, and it's those little pieces of information. I'm not always really good at taking a whole uh, bit of information and being able to relay it. It's when I'm speaking with people, and then something gets triggered, and all of a sudden it all kind of flows out. I'm a big picture person, but I don't always have the ability to explain the whole big picture. I guess that's the best way to put it. So yeah, the spirit meets body. It's really been interesting. And I usually, when I get into those kind of topics with people, I lose them because it can get too technical, and the physics are super interesting to me, but not always to everybody else.
Mm.
So, but I've really found it has to do with the DNA. our DNA. And even whether we're interested in that information or not, is about our DNA.
Maybe you can give us I love this because I feel like, yeah, like, the wheels are turning and some people may feel like they're super left brain, right? A lot of people do that. I gotta like I call it left brain it like over and over, like gotta figure it out. But I
Yeah.
love when this new information, maybe to our own like minds, like it's like really letting it sit in the body.
Mm.
And we can even start. I'm curious. I want to hear. I'm sure my my community would be curious too. Is just that connection, like for you and what you've seen and learned, is we'll start even the before life, this embryonic. You
Mm.
talk about DNA and like this information, and in many of years, people always ask, and we've had that conversation. I remember like when is the baby here? Like, when is their consciousness? And people think, I think there's something going around like, well, the baby's just, there's nothing until it's born, like, right? And it's
Yeah.
like a belief system we've created. But I
Yeah.
feel like you were explaining one time about the embryonic energetic. Do you remember that or no? I was like, I want to hear, I want the energy of the audience to feel, because I'm a feeler. So even if you say
Yeah.
things and my mind may be wandering, it's like I'm feeling the energetic structure of
Yeah.
your information. And so, yeah, and so, yeah, bring it to us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's when I get in trouble because I don't remember all the details. But um yeah, what it makes me curious about like what you felt when I first shared that information with you. Like,
It felt like, I just wanna say it felt like, you were going into some deep wormhole timeline, and it was
yeah.
like, and the possibility and the openness of it, it's like, it's good to know that there are other levels of thought process and possibility and energy, right? It's kinda like we think about, like, Einstein, right? Everything's a theory, but and then Bruce Lipton, epigenetics, everything's a theory, and they say a theory, but there's so much truth to it, right? It's, like, very I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I have that same experience where I'm like, no, but this is real. So, but yeah, so the yeah, there I it is really controversial. When does the baby actually enter the body? And I don't know if I can remember exact days, that I can tell you that again. I know I sent it written to you, but it's much later than we would think organically, right? But I think what I was talking about at the time was that something else goes on, something else happens, that becomes much sooner than it would be organically, and there's a reason for that. And that's when we would get into some really mm, areas that might be hard for people to follow me. So in this case, I guess what we were talking about was um, the 6-day fetal cell integration. I think, does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah, where there's I'll just go out in the weeds. This where what is how I describe it usually is I'm gonna go in the weeds for a little bit. You
Hmm.
can follow me or not, but it's when we the idea is that we have there's a mutation that's within the planetary grids, and we're structurally, energetically the same as the planet, because we're both in come through creation that way, so we're built the same. And I know that might not make a lot of sense, but it's I've heard it referred to as like the bones of God, how creation is set up. And when there's a mutation that's in the planet, that's going to be in us too. So the the mutation comes through the sperm, and then it enters, when it enters the egg, it takes us essentially on a different trajectory than we would be organically, and then it tethers the soul to the body sooner. And that means, like, if something is not right, where nature would just kind of the body would reject the pregnancy, or maybe even the incoming soul would be like, oh no, not yet, and it would the body would just go. Um, it complicates things for the soul to kind of have to deal with more than it would if it wasn't attached that soon. It gives us a little room. Um, and that's all fine, but uh coming in, that little mutation and the trajectory that it takes us on is a lot to kind of get into. And I think I've I think you kind of know where that conversation goes. Like, I can talk about my experience with what I energetically have seen with it.
That'd
If
be
you
amazing. Yeah.
so there is a technique to intervene on that mutation, what it sets up in us. And this is where it might trigger a lot of people because it I'll get to that. This little point ends up developing on the tailbone from that mutation. And in that little point on the tailbone, it when I went into it energetically, what I saw, because I did this work, let's just say I did this work on my husband because he's a great guinea pig for me. So I can use him to, test these things. So, and what I'm talking about isn't, it's information that can be found, and I'm certainly willing to share it all. And it's not my information specifically, it's just information that I had that I worked with. And so when I went in to look at it, because I wanted to remove it, um, it, his experience was surprisingly accurate when I didn't really tell him what I was going to do. Um, he knew generally what I was going to do, but it was interesting. So I went in, and I actually went in a little too far.
Hmm.
I went into the little red dot on the tailbone, and I it makes me so nervous telling this story because it's a lot. So I went in, and what I saw is it was essentially a little dimension of hell, and that's what kind of the mutation sets up for us, and that's why it's on the sixth day, if you can imagine, like
Mm.
the 666, yeah. So it sets that up, and I found in there that it's also connected to, and here we're going to go stretch a little bit into these, because everything exists simultaneously, all ourselves are, the past and the present, the future are all simultaneous. And so when I went into that, um, well, I'll explain first that I saw this like fiery kind of like, if you've there's movies I could use to describe it. I literally have one reference, which is if anyone's ever seen Keanu Reeves in Constantine.
Oh yeah, that's
Have you?
intense.
That's
Yes.
intense. I mean, they consider that a horror movie, but and it is
It
a little
seems like a real movie.
so graphic. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He's fighting Archangel Michael in that movie.
Mm.
So he has this reason, I can't even remember now, to go into hell, and he uses
Mm.
that chair and water with his feet, and he ends up in this really super fiery place. Well, I was shocked that first I was realized, oh, I'm in here. And I was
Mm.
looking at something very similar to what that scene showed. And I was like, whoa. And when I was there, I actually got that it was there's like all these sort of invitations to experience some level of, interference in our life. Like, for some it's very hell-ish, and for others not as much, right? And I don't know what determines that for
Mm.
somebody, but we can kind of see it in our world where, you drive into the city and you're going to see people who are literally operating like they're in some other reality, and they are, and it looks sort of hellish, and it's upsetting, but that's what I mean. So I backed out, seeing that, and uh then it was, of course, to deal with it. And so that's a whole technique description. So it's easier to say just that I removed it.
Mm.
when I removed it, because you have to be operating sort of at a certain frequency just to do this
Mm,
technique. And from that place, I could see that and the way I described it to my husband was with sound, because you always work with sound. That's my main modality, even though I'm super shy about it. And I don't typically go into the world with that. But um, so I use sound, but I could see the reverberation
mm,
from his body out to all these other timelines. And it was like a reset in a sense, because it informed them, because they affect us and we affect them. It's all us, but in different time space, you know, reality. So, and then it reverberated back. And then so it's just this reset. So from that, I got the name of, this is
mm,
the unburdening, because, and you could do a whole thing on that, because in that we are connected to our karmic lineage. There's a karma that kind of comes with just being born into a body through our families, and that connects us to it. And we don't have to be. We do not have to process or do. We carry so much in our bodies that's
mm.
not ours to carry, and it's, how do we know? Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really becoming, there's so much more awareness around that we are energy and information, and in relationship with all of that. And if we really understood that about ourselves, so if that's what we learned in school, it would be such a different experience for us. But that's not what we learn. We're completely denied that aspect to ourselves. So I mean, and I could go into that, but um in this case, I spent the last 30 years learning about energy. And so my world is a little different in the way I see things and the way I understand and process things. So this is natural to me at this point, to be able to, I was taught how to do all of this. And so with that also, I can get pretty creative. I'm
Well,
sure.
something you said, I love that because you've been like really in practice with the energetics for 30 years, and on Earth, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So your level of thought and your process, your perception is, and this is why we get along so well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I understand that because I know brought, I've brought
We can make up
different,
words.
yeah,
It's
yeah, we do
allowed.
that. Okay. I've brought like different insights and curiosities to you, and I'm like, for some reason, I was like, wow, she kind of understands my language, like,
I do.
and nobody does. I know that nobody does, and even when I'm one-on-one in sessions, some people they're very intuitive, beautiful, open, and loving, but some people I'm like, oh, I really want to go to this timeline wormhole conversation, right? Because that's what's coming through, but I also know they're not going to know what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
sometimes in a session, I feel like it's important to say something. I'll say, your left brain is not going to know what I'm saying right now, but I want you to hear it and just absorb it. Just let go, whatever that part of you is. But even when you were talking about, so coming back to, the clearing of that energy, when you were talking about that, what really came into my perception is almost like it reminds me of like a comet coming through into the atmosphere and it collects debris and stuff. And I'm like, is there now, you have me curious. It's like, is there this in between energy of like how we're integrating into a physical body, but are we picking up shit along the way?
Oh
At the
no.
entrance, and then he has like, maybe this is why people think that babies are born with sin. It's like what all this energy they've taken on. I mean, that's the idea. And, I'm no like religious person that knows enough about that, but I've heard that. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like what's collected. And you talk about the spine, right? It's like that little, I know in pre and perinatal psychology, that's our first growth into this world, right? Is like literally the spine.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then, and so you're saying, so there's these hell realms or whatever it was like is showing up in his body. Am I saying that right? Comes kind of?
Well, the way I saw it is, it's kind of
Yeah.
like the TARDIS. if you've watched Doctor Who, another reference is the TARDIS is the time machine, right? It's
Oh, okay, yeah.
small on the outside and big on the inside. So it's this one little dot, and it is literally just one
Yeah.
dimensional place. Yeah. And we don't have to, that's not ours. We didn't come in with that. That's not a human.
Yeah.
That's not divine design, as I would say.
Well, that, yeah, like that's why I use those words in the title, the divine blueprint. I love that. I took your energetic words, mixed it in there. And so then what happens now with your husband as the guinea pig? What changes in him after this experience? Anything different emotionally, spiritually, physically?
This is really cool. It's so much better to have him describe it in his words, but he's not here, so I'll do my best. I did sit down with him a couple days after the experience and videotape a conversation
Oh,
with him.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I couldn't totally share it was because of the actual technique. I really exposed exactly how to do it, which I still don't know that most people would even know how to do what I did. To me, it was easy, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's kind of like, the person who came up with the technique wasn't too happy with me about that part, but my intention was never to share the video out. It was like taking video notes so that I could
Yeah.
remember
You
it.
could do that.
Yeah, and it was a line. There's bits and pieces actually that we could even connect to, and somebody could, if they're curious enough, could go watch what he has to say. But the way he described it was, um, he talked about several things, but one of them was, he's the one that kind of came up with that the trajectory was changed, like it was
Mm.
meant to go this way, but then it's pulled off this way. He had a really good description for all that. He also talked about it comes, I don't know, I swear he mentioned something about this um picture that is well known. It's been around for a long time. It came from another country, I think, but it's where you see the globe, and there's half the world is in light and half is in dark, and there's I am not going to be able to explain it well, but he talked about, how did he put that? Oh gosh, I should have, if I'd known we would even go here, I would have watched it and kind of reminded myself. So maybe we'll have to make a connection. I'll have to send that video to you so you can
Then everybody's gonna be like, "But Kelly, like, what?"
well,
I
yeah,
told you we're casual conversation here. We don't know where it's going.
and I told you my memory is not always, that's why I have a hard time
Well,
with.
it's okay. I mean, it sounds like he had a healing experience from this. And would you say this is something that was an embryonic level for him? Is that where we were? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say he described, because I did not tell him the details. That's what blew me away.
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
he got perfectly what this was, even
Wow.
though I did not tell him.
Yes.
And so, that's why his description is so important, and unfortunately, I'm not being able to relay
Yeah. And
it.
if you can't speak it the way you want, it's fine.
Yeah, okay.
We're gonna leave people in mystery.
Oh my gosh, well, if you want, you can always connect a link to, there's the video, some of the video is on YouTube in pieces, because, the person who did come up with the technique, who taught me, and I did my own version of the technique.
Yeah, you're your own sovereign soul. I feel like when we learn like Reiki or something, it's
Mhm.
really not about the practice of Reiki. It's literally the person, is what I feel,
Sure,
you
that's true.
know?
And Reiki, in my from my perspective as an energy person, is that it's really overused, and the reason is because people are trying to describe energy work to
Yeah,
others.
exactly.
Reiki is so well known that
That's
it's,
why I give that as an example.
yes, exactly. So they do understand it.
Yeah, and but people take and do what they want with things. So what I think what I'm coming down to, it's like,
Mhm.
but I know what you're saying. Energetically, it's hard to put articulate words
It is.
to this story. It's like, here, feel my experience. Let's download it.
He's so good at describing it though, and really, so we're so different in that regard. He is
Mm.
very articulate. Let's just say that. I'm not quite as articulate as he is.
Have you
So,
done this work, not to cut you off, have you done this work with like mothers and like
ah,
healing, maybe healing their own their wounds from their own childhood or babyhood, or maybe there's something that's coming to you. Yeah, I want to hear.
That's such a good question because yes, I before I knew this technique, I knew of the existence of it, right? And it not a lot at the time. And I was working with a mom. She came to me for some craniosacral work with, and she was pregnant and she was due, not long after. And I was just sitting in the energy with her. And all of a sudden the baby is like, hey, can you do this for me? She was asking me to remove that cell from her tailbone.
Oh.
And I was just blown away out. First thing was like, who are you? Because
Mm.
you're talking to me about something that I wasn't even it was like the farthest thing from my mind at that moment. And then here's this baby like, hey, can you just do this for me right now? Well, I'm still pretty much completely energy and not, I haven't quite made the transition into the world yet. Yes. And I was like, yes. And so later I found out that generally speaking, the technique isn't done on um, children or babies. It's usually someone older.
Mm.
I don't exactly know the reason for that because that wasn't my experience. I was just taught that, but that was even later after this experience. But I was like, hey, a baby asked me for this, and I did it, and I told the mom, I was like, I don't know who this kid is, but look out. This one's this one's gonna be, it's one of the new ones that is what I like to say. One of the new ones that they're coming in with some stuff cleared out of the way. They're not coming in with as much to sort of
Mm.
get through like say, I was, or some people that I know, older than me that, yeah, even more.
Got a
But
lot to sort through.
yeah, a lot to sort through, and
Yeah.
you mentioned it, that we do have a lot of interference here. If a thing that drives me crazy, and I'll just bring up movies, really
Mm.
like to program us um with the idea that humans are the ones who are at fault for every,
Mm.
and they like to you'll catch it. It's so subtle, but it's a running theme through most movies that I see. And the truth is, there's something else going on here. And yes, we are responsible. Yes, we do have messes to clean up. And yes, we're actually supposed to be the guardians of this planet.
Mm.
But we've been interfered with
Mm.
from the get-go, like coming in. And there is so much going on in this field. I should mention that dot on the tailbone. This is the controversial part.
Mhm.
If nothing else I said already, let me add this to it. The tailbone, that little spot on the tailbone, I saw what it creates in our field. Not
Mm.
just that little spot, but the tube torus. It generates the tube torus. What is the tube torus? It's
Um,
a closed energy system. It
mm.
is a not organic to us. So when the whole new age thing is running around saying the tube torus is great geometry, the planets got it, all the planets have it, all our bodies have it, it's something that's natural to us. No, no, it's not. That's
And
one
you're
of the,
like, let's break it and get rid of it.
I'm
Oh,
like, yeah, I want to tear that net down. So
wow.
yeah, so some of what I feel like my maybe soul contract here
Yeah.
is to help people clear these things
Mm.
as they're bringing in, you know, babies, that they're coming. Can you imagine kids are coming in, they don't have all this stuff that I could get into, the seven
Yeah.
overlay. We're all taught in the new age stuff that the seven chakras is what we're working with. That's actually an overlay. We're actually 15. And once we integrate, because there are people out there teaching to remove it, and
Mm.
you sure could choose to do that, but I don't recommend it because all that's information and we just need to integrate it. And
Mm.
once we do that, we're working with a completely our organic chakra system. It's different. It looks different energetically. If you had clairvoyance, you would see it different.
Mm.
And Same thing, the tube torus does not belong there. So, yes, it is something I like to remove.
Yeah,
So,
you're just teaching me something because I've never heard of those terms. I don't, but I know what you mean. I feel like in the new age, like people would come to me for a session throughout the years and be like, will you clear my chakras? Will you clear my blocks? And I'm like, it's so much more than that for me. I'm like, but I understand why people have created more of a fluff language, we could say, because
sure.
the stuff that you're going into, it's really freaking deep, but it's also very activating, right?
Mhm. Yeah, there's
Because it's almost like you see something, you know something, and you're embodying it, but you're like bringing it forward to kind of reflect to other people, and people don't want to be reflected to. I
I
could
would
see it
agree.
being super intense, and yet I love how this baby was like, you're like backing away going, okay, baby. Baby's like, we got to do this. You're like, okay, let's do this. And I love that because I've seen with spirit babies throughout the years that they are the healer sometimes to the parents, whether the parent realizes it or not.
Yeah, I mean, this brings me to Ray Castillino, because you were talking about, you know, how you didn't say it in these words, but how we embody this information. I was thinking about this earlier today, where Ray embodied, he illuminated really what it was to be a baby.
Mm.
He embodied that, and like in a way I've never seen. And you've met him, right? I
Can you give an introduction to who Ray is again? Do you know his? Yeah.
Yeah, Ray's well, he was a chiropractor, so he's a doctor, but his study was imprints, and the things he taught were like sequencing. So there was the seven principles. I think it's seven principles of I don't remember what he called it. I think he just called them the seven principles or something. Like if you look Ray Castillino and seven,
Yeah.
you're gonna find what that is.
And he had a whole clinic in Santa
Yeah,
Barbara,
they did.
California. Yeah, and I know because my school, when I went 18 years ago, they had intermixing classes, and I don't think I've ever physically, I may have met him in passing, but I never experienced anything with him.
Oh, okay.
And honestly, do you know why?
Why?
I was so intimidated by his energy and the work he was doing because I didn't know at the time. So this was like when I started, my early 30s, I had a lot of birth fear and trauma.
Okay.
So I was literally in avoidance with him. I was like, it just scared the hell out of me. But then I didn't realize after the journey, I was like, I had so much foundational trauma. It was literally suppressed in me. And then, it was acting out in ways, obviously through body discomfort and chronic pain. But then I know, and I feel like, oh, like I never got to like sit one-on-one experience his energy. But I did attend his memorial, his virtual memorial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's how you knew him, I guess. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, just go watch videos of Ray. So
Yeah.
Ray, but to be in his presence was to understand an infant in a he slowed down time.
Mm,
He was so present,
mhm.
and it you could feel it, from him. I did a
Very much
couple.
so.
Yeah, it was really special because I got to do a couple workshops with him, not the womb surround, which I think would have been amazing, but I did the impulse into being with him a couple.
Mm. Mhm.
And the cool part was that we did it in water too. So it was land
Mm,
and
wow.
sea. Yeah,
Yeah.
so the water experience with when you're healing your own birth stuff is phenomenal. It to me, there's no better place really to experience healing those places in yourself really deep is in warm water. So yeah, he just illuminated that. He could describe, and not it wasn't just his descriptions, his teaching was just, you know, was you could, is the word imbibe, is that
Mm, I don't
from
know.
just his presence, it would you would get it. And especially if you're
Like
energetic.
an energetic kinesthetic. I know when I did see him before, probably a few years before he passed, he did do this group, and he was looking at the people and he's like taking everybody in all quietly, and He's like, "Wait," and you can feel him melting into the space. Yeah, he was highly empathic. I would even say kinesthetically, energetically, very much aware of that. And so I could see why the baby energies would gravitate towards
Mhm.
that authentic openness, male, even male energy, father energy, right?
Yes, yes, and especially because so like, if you ever spend time with babies and you just are still and you make eye contact with
Mm.
them and you all of a sudden, I don't know, for me, I can feel my heart just
Mm.
open and then it's like boom, there's this connection. I just recently attended a birth where this little guy, the first time I met him, he was in utero, of course, and someone had brought hawk feathers because those are the blissing way, is what I call it, the blissing way. And she mentioned these hawk feathers, and all of a sudden I just saw this light open up in the room, and it was just connected, and it was that energy coming in. I don't know that it was
Mm.
that it was a connection to him. And then when I we got to the place where we were actually supporting the mom with some physical touch and sound, um I saw a light between her heart and him in the belly. I didn't know what
Oh.
until I saw what you described, and at the time I completely discounted it. It was a blue light. There was a couple different light, but the blue was very present between her heart and him.
Mm.
And he told me right there, you he's like, "I'm Hawk.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow.
I am a boy." I was
Yeah,
like,
I want to kind of reverse a little bit. Why were we talking about Ray? I couldn't remember when were we going into that conversation.
we're talking
We got so caught up with Ray because we're so honoring of him because he's passed
yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly.
But he was embodying that like infant, childlike. What I wanted
Yes,
to, yeah.
because of the embodiment of a very, um I just have never experienced anything like it.
Mm,
You mentioned something earlier in our conversation about embodying an energy, and he's such a good example.
yes,
Somebody
yes.
who embodies an energy. Like I still to this day I've never experienced anything like it.
Wow. I know. I was like, "Oh, darn it." I knew my energy wasn't ready for him at the time. And then it just shifted out to different spaces, but now you got me, like, curious because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, like, you're a midwife. You have this highly sensitive energetic connection,"
Mhm,
and how beneficial I would say that would be when things happen because I know I had my first, home birth transfer to a hospital, which I feel like I've shared this story throughout the years. Maybe I did, but I'm going to share it on another platform in a larger way. It was highly traumatic.
mm,
And but the midwife was I thought she was great, but in that space and time, she was misattuned
mhm.
and it sent her fear and energy to a different direction, which I'm sure was a deeper karmic thing with me as well. Like subconscious, this whole birth fear, my whole foundation was literally coming to this precipice of some kind. And
Sure, yeah.
so you tell, yeah, so I want to hear what have you even seen as, like really anything cool, like, oh my gosh, this happened, or that are you allowed to share?
Yeah, I think so. The one that's so present with me is the one I just, experienced. So, but that almost was, oh, okay. I think I have one. Hawk was cool and he's still cool and I'm still working with him. This guy,
Hmm.
he's amazing. But there's this one story of a birth where, um, the mom, was she's a little like over the due date. And so we did a little energy work around that. And then she went into labor and and some of the issue, I guess, was that the her and the father were together, but there was conflict. And I came into the birth scene and she was really irritated with him and just really wanted him out of the space.
Mm.
And I'm all about just, following the energy. And so it was such an interesting experience because uh, I felt like it was my first experience, not that I hadn't experienced it before, but to this level.
Mm,
And what it taught me, and what I actually feel like is a man's place in a birth.
mm,
And of course, I'm speaking in terms of male and female here, um, just because that's mostly what I've experienced. And so in this case, um, yeah, she wanted him out of the birth. And so I came in. What I'm trying to say is that I'm really respectful of the father's place in the birth.
mm,
As a midwife, I don't come in to take over and and control the energy of like and pushing anybody aside or making my place as the one who receives the baby or anything like that, because to me that is
mm, mhm,
like a lifelong imprint, of whose hands are there first. It's
mm.
physiologically, it's you're laying down the bacteria in the intestines when you the first one who touches baby.
I wanna hear about now I'm gonna go off on another thing because 'cause I'm like, I wanna hear about that. So my husband, the midwife the midwives, had my husband he was like everyone on video going, "I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing." They're
Yeah,
like, "Just put your hands here." And then
yeah.
he was like, "What is all this stuff on my hands?" But I have to say my son wasn't washed either,
Mhm.
and he's really super healthy. I've never seen a healthy like, he barely ever gets sick, and if he does, it's for a second, and it's very easy. And so I love what you're saying, it's like that bacteria, that first contact.
It's really important. All that
Mm.
bacteria is super important because yeah, it sets them
So
up.
then yeah, sorry, so then what happened now? So you're in the space, fathers yeah.
Yeah, so he left, actually, left the house, and I just really, how do I say this? I just went in deep.
Mm.
That's what it felt like. And I had this connection with her, and I could feel sometimes hours and then sometimes minutes what was gonna come. So,
Mm,
like,
what
even
you mean like in your body or like energetically or both?
I could, and sometimes I could hear, like,
Mm.
what she needed to hear, and sometimes I
Mm.
could always feel in my body.
Yeah.
I can always feel in my body. And, so, yes, energetically, and I guess that's clairsentience
Yeah.
when you feel in the body. So I could feel when her contractions would come,
Wow.
my body, and then I could feel if they were really strong or if they weren't going to be as strong. So I knew how to move with her to like um brace for that, how strong it would be, the incoming energy.
Mm.
And I guess in some ways what I was doing there was helping her hold it so that, I don't know how to explain that exactly. Here's the energy conversation, right? it, Sometimes I think, and this is why I think I was doing something that I think men are actually supposed to do with
Oh,
their
wow.
partner. I feel like when if a couple was really attuned,
Mhm.
they could literally the man could hold more of that birth in terms of
Wow.
carrying um some of the relieving, actually. And I don't think actually birth was meant to be painful.
Oh, I love this. Oh, you have me like
Mhm.
that's so profound to me because the energy of that because I know it was in the 70s. They let fathers in the room with women, which is fascinating, right? Like they weren't even allowed.
They weren't even allowed.
Wow.
Yes, men were arrested trying to come into the room with their
Yes.
food.
And so when what you're saying, I can really feel into that, and it's so powerful, especially if you're in a partnership of male and female. What is the father's role, and what is the energy of that? And I'm sure it has a lot to do with trauma, for sure, with the masculine and the feminine. But yeah,
So
keep going, keep
so
going.
much, right? This is deep because yeah, what how much did that displace us, as partners when yeah, men weren't even allowed. Like birth had been taken into this surgical room separation, I'll just use the words that we are in a construct, a system of separation. And so many things are about going into separation. And so a lot of the repair around this is being able to come back together and really truly understand our roles with each other. And so my experience in this birth was, I truly felt that it I was experiencing it, but it's for the man.
Mm,
And and men are always like, well, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. And
mm.
I'm always like, love. You're
Oh,
supposed to love. Like, it's
yeah.
all your
Yeah.
open heart. Men would be the protectors of
Yeah.
birth. There's more to it than that. So energetically, they have a lot they can do, and they could feel. They could energetically, they could feel what's going on. I know if I could do it, they could do it.
Mm,
So they could, I knew what to say to her, like I said, sometimes, and hours in advance, that we're going to eventually unfold. And so at some point during all of this, her husband came back, and of course he was welcome in, right? He just came in, and he said to us later, when he was watching us, he said, I think you were speaking a different language.
mm,
And we weren't. We really weren't. It was just that we were so tuned in, it probably
mm,
seemed like, what's the context? What are you guys even talking about? But that's how deep
mm.
it was, our connection. And I have to say, she was an energy sensitive. So it was, we
I
were a good.
love that because when you were just sharing that in the beginning, I literally had this impression of this image come into my mind of like a shaman mother with a daughter, like
Mm,
helping her just be like just holding the space of energy, speaking that language of energy. Obviously, it sounded like because of course, you know what I'm going to say, when people left brain it, they don't hear anything, they don't see anything.
yeah,
And so, but it's really beautiful in partnership that he was even able to reflect that, to
yeah,
have the conversation. Like, I'm sure he wanted to be a part of it somehow, but maybe that was all the capacity he had for it. And how awesome. This is why I love midwives, to come in as that mothering, nurturing energy, because the way the world is and the way birth is, and we know that's a whole other conversation, it just feels so separate and not intimate and diseased and disabled. And so I can really feel your story. And it's just, I feel like you've just sparked this like this profoundness with the male and female. Yeah, like what are the roles, even in
yeah,
a home birth, a center birth? Because I've seen different roles come up, and
yeah.
what I needed from my partner, it felt like a lot, like
Mhm.
energetically. I remember with my second birth, my first birth, I was like, nobody touch me. It felt so activating. It just felt like too much. And then, especially like my husband felt nervous, and then I want to take care of him. With the second one, I could feel a tap on the shoulder, a little touch from him, but it also felt very sexual, which I thought was interesting. I'm like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
where are we
nice.
going with this? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
do I want that? Do I not want that? It was very conflicting in my mind because I was like, how can I be sexual with all these midwives? Like, I don't, that's why I don't understand birth is so intimate and sexual, really. And then we
Mhm.
do it in like a hospital with sick people with spotlights. Like, this is why women can't open. Like,
That's right.
that you just go have sex in the middle of the operating table and just
Sure.
see how that works. Like, just we're
Exactly.
primal. It's like it doesn't work that way. You
No,
can't.
but it's sort of like the baby got in a certain way, and that's like when I
Exactly.
taught birth classes, I was like, "Look, you have this environment to make the baby. You need that same environment."
Yes, I love that you teach that. Is that what you share?
Yeah.
That is so great. Yeah, I wish somebody, well, I didn't take any education classes, but I like that. That makes sense. It actually makes sense more like viscerally and like nature, like
Yes.
yeah, like that's, we don't see animals. Well, I guess if you go to the zoo, you could see them doing intimate things because
Mhm.
people are spying on them.
Right,
But
there
you don't see
there's
them, the
mhm.
gazelles or the lions doing it in front of people. Like, here, people are spying on them, I should say. Animals, are very animalistic. Like I always think of the kittens that find the closet to have their babies.
That's right. I was thinking the same exact thing. My cat found me when she wanted to have her babies. She came and got me.
Oh, of
And
course. She's like, "Hey, you ready? We're gonna do that." Oh,
yeah,
okay. And you're
she
just, what
did.
are you doing? You're just kind of listening to the cat.
I totally did, and
Oh my
I
gosh.
got a dark place for her. She did it through
Oh
the
yeah.
entire night, but she wanted me there the whole time. So what I did was
Oh.
I didn't even get to see it. I was right
Oh.
there and did
Yeah.
not actually witness it because I fully respected
Yeah.
that it was private and that's how birth works. So
Wow.
lights were completely out and I just stayed with her. And
Hmm.
she birthed and I knew she would do every single thing she needed to do. And all she wanted me to do was just be present and not touch anything or do
Wow.
anything for her. I've witnessed things online where people the cat's in a box in the light and
Oh
the
gosh.
people are picking them up and oh, I was like, oh,
Are they licking them too? They're not letting the mom
yeah,
do it?
seriously.
Well,
I'm
I
like,
mean, look at
whoa.
humans, we intervene in everything, like a little way too much.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but especially in birth, and I love it's just so beautiful, the energy that you bring. And I can really, again, I know we're like empath to empath, but just I appreciate all these things that you shared. And I feel like there's more to share, but I want you to actually ways that people can find your work.
Hmm. Well, I do have a website, although, and I do have the some of the birth stuff on there. I can how I do it is I'm a sacred birthing mentor, and that's kind of using the work of Saint Carl only because I agree with so much of it, and it's it's because I'm baby centric. You
Mm,
know, I know, and I women are extremely important, obviously, but from my perspective, if we just take care of the baby, we're going to be taking care of the mom too.
mm.
You can't separate them. So
And
that's why.
you're more local. Is this what your work is, more local or more international?
Oh, online I can work. I work with people all over the world.
So yeah, give me your website for that.
It's my name.com. So ANASTACIATOWNSEND.com.
And in the show notes, I'll have all this information, but I also like to verbally hear it.
Yeah.
But, there's so many, yeah, I feel like the conversation can keep going and continuing, and there's so much to say in the energetics. And I want you, anything you can leave people with. Maybe somebody's like, I'm ready to birth, or I'm pregnant, or I'm scared, or whatever it is. What is the best advice that you can give?
Hmm. Well, for me, I guess it's understanding our connection to nature. It's not just a connection, it's that we are nature itself. And again, it's when I mentioned this system of separation and going into separation, it's all about it's knowing ourselves from our center, which is our heart, and staying connected there because that love and staying connected to your baby with that love and then going out from there is it's the safest place you can give birth from. I All the births I've attended have been easy. They've been amazing. Even when they're a little, they go a little bit, but mostly just super good outcomes. And that's because that's what we work with. We what the way I see birth is there's this energy, a massive energy that flows through the body and wherever we've gone into separation and that just means outside of we're holding something outside of unconditional love from
Mm.
ourselves. So in wholeness, it's we know our center and we allow that to flow through us completely. There's no place that it can kind of get caught up, the energy can get caught up. So the more you can just be that open to that energy coming through, the easier it's going to be. And in fact, it can even go into bliss. Our divine birthright is bliss.
Mm,
We are meant to be in bliss.
perfect. Well, thank you, Anastasia, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure with you.
And thank you all for joining episode 187. Everything is frequencies, expanding into your own divine blueprint to invite the energy of spirit babies. Of course, you get the audio through the podcast, but now come and join. I think it's called At Spirit Baby Communication. I should maybe check that out on YouTube. And so you get to watch us on video. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly Meehan. Please join my community and stay in touch with monthly energy rants, Spirit Baby poetry, and get access to Spirit Baby 101 with tips and practices at my newsletter at newearthchildren.com. And join me on Instagram with lives at Spirit Baby Medium, and join the Mighty Networks, the Spirit Baby Collective membership, and Motherhood to Mediumship. Remember, you are the heart that holds communication, and it is your time to connect. Come share in the great shift of your mind and the true spirit of your heart with Spirit Baby Communication.